So we're going to clean our fly lines, and we do the floating lines and the sinking lines in exactly the same way. Okay, I find it easier to initially to remove the spool from the reel. You want a bowl of nice lukewarm water with a little bit of washing up liquid in it, only a little bit of washing up liquid with it, and you want a bowl of just cold clean water as well. Okay, you're going to strip the line off the reel into your bowl of lukewarm water with detergent in it, and you're just going to let it sit there for about 5 minutes, just enough time to dislodge the dirt. While you're doing that, drop the spool inside there as well, and leave the spool inside there as well, and that will dislodge any dirt that you find on the spool or inside the spool in here. You don't want any grit or anything caught up on the inside here. After about 5 minutes, give the spool a nice little wipe round with a cloth, with a nice non-abrasive material cloth, a nice soft cloth. You certainly don't want to be doing any of this with scouring pads or anything else. You'll damage the tackle. That goes for the lines, the reels, the rods, the lot. Stay clear of all that sort of thing, any abrasives. Once that line's been in there, pop it back on the reel. I like to mount the reel on an old rub butt, it just makes things easier, and then gently wind that line back up again, running the line through your hand with the cloth in it, with a cloth soaked in the detergent, in the washing up liquid, and that'll just clean everything off as it goes through. Once that's done, you're going to move on to the bowl of cold water and just strip all the line off into the bowl of cold water, fresh water. Let it sit there for a few seconds, and then you're going to wind this back on the reel again. All you want to do is to wash off any excess detergent that might be left on there. We're not using a heavy mix of detergent, you don't need to. When you're winding that back on for all of your lines, your floater, your intermediate lines and your sinking lines, this is going to be the last time you touch them, okay? So just wind them back on. They're going to be on the spool now for another month at best. You know, you're probably looking at longer than that possibly before you use a lot of these lines. So don't wind them on too tightly, nice and loosely when they go back on the spool, okay? And this should help to stop any memory creeping into the line. We are all going to have memory in our lines when we go back out after lockdown. It's inevitable. I mean, we haven't used the fly lines for 2 to 3 months. These are plastic coated lines, and it doesn't matter what brand of line you've got, you're going to have some sort of memory in this. It's not down to the manufacturer, a lot of this is just down to the fact that you're not using the line often enough. I'll do another little video to explain line memory and line twist and how to get rid of those two phenomena in fly lines. But by spooling this up nice and loosely, you're going to make life easier for yourself when you come to use it. So with your sinking lines, that's it. Just put them aside, let them dry out, give them 4 or 5 hours sitting on the side somewhere, just let them dry out, and then you can put everything back together again. With the floating line, the one extra thing I like to do with this is once you've dried the line out and it's gone through that process and it's nice and clean, I'll give it a little treatment with this stuff, and this is just muslin. Okay, this is just box standard muslin. The logo's gone there, but it's green muslin. You'll find it anywhere. And I'm just going to take that, and what I will do is again strip the line off when it's dry, and I'm just going to run the line back through. There's a little pad inside this with a little drop of this muslin, this floatant on it, and it's also a great treatment, a great conditioner for any floating fly line. It's very cheap, a lot cheaper than a lot of the stuff that's out there. Wind it back through again, and that'll be your floating line taken care of. Okay, you won't have to do anything else to that. When you're doing this with your lines, taking the time to clean your lines and clean your spools, just take the time to inspect the braided loops or the welded loops at the end of the fly line there. It's a good time to replace any that don't look quite right. They're inexpensive and easy to do. And also look for any nicks or any marks or anything like that that might be on the line, any sign of cracking. And certainly if you're like me and you've been fishing places like Walthamstow and other reservoirs from the bank, Graffham, off the gravels and the rocks, check your lines, check your running lines for any nicks or any damage that's been caused by the tough and abrasive substrate that you've been fishing over. If you do find some, you can look into repairing them. There's a few ways to repair fly lines, or it's something just to be aware of. If they're too bad, then now's the time to look to getting a replacement, because there's plenty of cheap deals out there, and you don't want to be getting down to the fishing when we're all running back after lockdown and casting out and your line goes one way your rod goes the other way, just parts company, and you certainly don't want to be snapping on that one of those big grown on fish that we're likely to come across when we get back. And that's your basic line care really. It's very, very straightforward, very, very easy and very inexpensive, and it's something to do once or twice a year. You can do it more often. I think the less you use the tackle, the more you need to do this. When I'm fishing on a day-to-day trip fishing, especially with these floating lines or anything that's picking up from fishing in a muddy area, the last thing I'll do on a day is chuck the line out, do a real long cast, chuck as much line out as I possibly can, submerge the whole rod and the reel in the water if you can get down to it, and you can in most places, and then reel everything back through in the water with the reel actually submerged. It'll just help to knock any grit or any rubbish or any muck off your line as you're coming back through again. But do that on your lines and you shouldn't have any trouble when it come out to the start of the new season, and it's also going to give you a bit more longevity. Look after your tackle, look after your floating lines.